college respondent. I'm from East Central High School, and it seems that the right to bear arms was more practical when the Constitution was being written than it is now. And what do you think about this?
The right to bear arms? You mean naked arms? Bear arms? Oh, bear, like never mind. Hairy. Well, that is one of the most interesting amendments. I think the Declaration as a whole, the Constitution as a whole, most of the amendments are pretty clearly stated, even if they're open to vast interpretation. But the Second Amendment seems to me like you can read anything you want to in it. Certainly people with agendas either way do. I don't know. You called it, the Second Amendment says that we have the right to bear arms. And so, I don't know. Now, let's say that we were updating it and dusting it off. What would we even call an arm today? Chemical weapons? What would we call, portable nuclear weapons? What were we talking about?
Classify it as anything. I think that the right to bear arms mean more anything that's harmful to somebody else.
If I were an expert in mixed martial arts, I could do lethal damage to somebody with my bare arms. But these are, can I tell you what Jefferson thought?
Sir.
Well, Thomas Jefferson actually thought that in terms of reforming the Virginia Constitution, it originally only gave the right to bear arms to people who owned property. And guess who owned property? Men who had money, and in most cases. So those who did not own their own property did not have the right to bear arms in Virginia's Constitution. Thomas Jefferson wanted to give every American male, rich or poor, whether he owned property or was a tenant, the right to bear arms, and his fellow Virginia elite would have nothing to do with it. You know why? Because if they wanted to revolt and ask for the same rights as their fellow elites, why, they could have risen up in arms and had real arms to do that, and the elite didn't want that. So Thomas Jefferson wanted to create a more level playing field. So he actually believed that anyone had the right to bear arms on their property, and property was defined as where they lived. When I've held Constitution Cafe dialogues today, people are quite divided about this subject, and they break down typically in one of two ways. Either they want the right to bear arms on their property, and property has been defined in many different ways. Many would think it's in their car, on their person. Most typically think it's in terms of the property, their private property, whether it's rental or an owned home or something like that. But then there's another group that interprets the existing Second Amendment quite differently and would like the language made clearer to say that only those in modern-day versions of the militia should have the right to bear arms. Only when they're on duty. And when they're not on duty, that it should be put in a magazine or something like that, a modern-day version of places where you put arms. When they're not on duty as a police officer in the National Guard or in the Army or another branch of the military, they should not be able to bring their weapons home with them, that the only time that one should be able to bear arms is when on duty, defending U.S. soil or a U.S. community. So it's very interesting how it's breaking down right now. Are you filming that? Okay, but